Hello to the viewers out there, and once again, hello to State Representative Charlie Kimbell, who's joining us today from the State House. It is Friday, April, is it like 29th?
29th.
All right, 29th.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it if you stepped outside. I don't know what it's like in Montpelier today, but down here it's gusty and quite cool.
Yeah, a little chilly. I mean, the sun is out, but it's deceptive because it's not very warm at all.
Yeah, spring has not quite sprung yet, and it's starting to wear on me a little bit if I were to show my cards. It's definitely taking its toll this spring. I wish it would hurry up and get here. So you're at the State House. So I imagine something kept you there on Friday. What kept you there today?
Yeah, so it's late Friday in April, which means we're really close to adjourning. But it also means that we're at that point where we're making amendments to bills that have to pass. And so I'm here because we made an amendment to a large economic development bill that we just had to get through the Appropriations Committee on the House side. And it was something that came in at the last minute when the administration came to us and said, hey, you know what? We need to have that program change a little bit. So in the course of 2 days, we really amended an existing program called the Capital Investment Program. And we're changing that to the Community Recovery and Revitalization Program. So in order to direct more money to those smaller communities that might have been experiencing a lot of declines in the grand list, even there's a lot of them too throughout Vermont. Outside of those big municipal areas like Burlington, South Burlington, that kind of area, then you've got a lot of towns that just haven't experienced any growth, and they've actually got a decrease in the net value of their grand list. Hard to believe that right now when property values are so high. But 2011 through 2021, it was definitely the case. So there are some towns that they have not experienced a kind of economic recovery from the last recession that the Chittenden County and the other municipal areas have. So it's, anyway, trying to help them. So that's why I'm here so late, is that I had to get that one amendment onto that bill. And things are we're in the negotiation phase. And then now it's a matter of guessing, when are we going to get out of here?
What do you think?
And I don't know. I mean, the leadership in the Senate and the House are both pushing for May 6th. But it's really hard to believe that when we've got such large bills that seem like we're far apart, even between the House and the Senate, never mind the governor. And the governor is talking about vetoing a lot of bills, and it's a credible threat. So we've got one is the pension bill. And that is
a lot of news this week. Tell us a little bit about that.
It did. It had to come through the House. So there's two things, is that there was this study committee that was done over the summer involving both state employees, legislators, municipal employees, and somebody from the governor's office and also the treasurer's office to try to come up with a compromise as to how to manage the unfunded liabilities in the pension fund. And we're looking at putting another $200 million in this year towards it, which is a lot of money, but it still makes a small dent in the $5 billion of liability. So this agreement was to try to increase some of the contribution that is made by some people inside of the public pension system, and for others, it was when benefits start and making sure that what are the annual cost of living adjustments and when did they start, what percentage are they? So there was this whole agreement that was hammered out. And that really the legislature said, okay, we're going to take that agreement and we're just going to put it into statute. So that's what we've been doing. And then the governor came out last week and this week and saying it's not enough. Wants to have that 401k style plan, defined contribution plan for the employees instead of the defined benefit plan. And so the question is he going to veto the bill? Don't know. And there was someone who weighed in from Burlington, and he is the former managing partner of KPMG up in Burlington. David Coates is his name. And he strongly suggested that we come up with some kind of defined contribution plan, and we're not adding enough money to the liability, so we're just kicking the can down the road. I don't think we are. We're making a very important step forward. We already have improved how the pension is managed, so some really good things are happening. Is it enough to solve the problem forever? No. So we'll be talking about this probably every year, every 3 years, every 5 years. But yeah, it's a big deal. And the governor could veto the budget. So there's some stuff in the budget he's not getting enough money that he wanted to have in something that was originally called community investment or capital investment programs for transformational projects in every region. And we've just been working with his administration to figure out how to make that this new community recovery and revitalization fund. That, and let's see, there's other stuff on liquor and lottery. There's a rental housing bill that establishes a registry for any properties that are rented more than 90 days in a year, mandatory registration, and to maintain safety. So the governor doesn't like the bill. But there's also in that bill, there's $20 million that's set aside for the housing improvement plan, which is basically set aside for improving either blighted or non-code compliant rental properties. So it's one of those things where, are you going to veto that and it contains something you like? Don't know. That's the stage we're at. An Act 250 bill, and that's S234, and it has a lot in there that the governor would agree to, but it also has something about governance, and it's part of another bill that's been added into this, now sent back to the Senate, and it's a test as to whether or not the governor will accept that. So that's where we are now.
So there's a lot of uncertainty as you head into the final stretch here.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. Uncertainty as to are the House's priorities, are the priorities of the House going to be honored by the Senate and vice versa? And then what are we going to do with the governor? So it's, there's a lot of work that still remains to be done, but in a very short period of time. The worst thing we could do is just extend the session because there's really not that much left to negotiate. I mean, we know what the things are. And if we spend more time, then it gets people thinking, hey, well, as long as we're here, why don't we try this new thing? And so some really funky stuff happens at the end of the session. So the sooner we're out, the better it off is for Vermonters.
And hopefully no veto session.
Yeah, and that's where the other betting pool is. The betting pool is, there are 3 things to bet on right now. When are we getting out? Are we going to have a veto session? And who's running for what office? So those are the 3 things right now that everybody loves to talk about. Yeah. So, the Secretary of State stepping down. So there's another person who stepped up to run for that office.
And that's Sarah Copeland-Hanzas?
Sarah Copeland-Hanzas. So she's out getting signatures on her petition. Chris Winters is already in that race. There's another person in that race. Great speculation as to whether or not the governor is going to run for re-election.
Because he hasn't announced that yet.
He hasn't announced, and he wants to wait until the end of the legislative session, and before he makes an announcement. And most people would say, yeah, he's definitely in because he hasn't said otherwise. But he hasn't said otherwise, so really hard to say that he's in. And then Michael Pieck just stepped down from the Department of Financial Regulation, and he's been in that position for a long time and has really earned some stripes there. A lot of credibility, well liked, well thought of. So is
wants
he
to
going
go explore other opportunities, he said.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
A lot of speculation.
So will there be an appointment to fill that vacancy?
Probably an interim right now, because I'm sure the governor has a lot on his plate trying to figure out what to do. So I don't think he'll make a permanent position right now. He could, but typically you appoint somebody to an interim director. I think it's commissioner, not a director, interim commissioner of that department. And then down the road, look for a permanent replacement. But in an election year, it gets really funky. If he decides to run for re-election, sure, that makes perfect sense to try to appoint somebody on a permanent basis. But if he's not, then the person that would be filling that position is a political appointee and might only be in that position for a number of months. So it's like, so it makes more sense to have an interim. Yeah.
Michael Pieck, I mean, in addition to his job as a commissioner of financial regulation, and that's the title, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he was the point person for the state COVID response.
Yeah, so he was in charge of really all of the modeling as to what is the rate of incidents that we have right now, what does it look like going forward, and using that information and giving that to the health commissioner, Mark Levine, and the governor to try to then figure out what they were going to do in terms of the safety protocols. Are we masking? Are we not masking? So he wasn't making those calls so much as really all of the data
Yeah.
and analysis of the data to figure out what do things look like now? What are they going to look like in 2 or 3 months? He had hired a consulting firm to help him do that analysis, a company called Oliver Wyman, and they did provide that data for him, and it's really critical because there's a lot of crunching. How do we compare to other states? Remember when we were looking at maps? Are we orange? Are we red? Are we yellow? And so that was all really important information to have. Now we think we're out of the woods, but the incidence of COVID is really high right now, and a lot of folks have left the state house to quarantine for a short period of time, and this just seems like it's part of life right now.
All right. So, what else can you tell me from the past week, and what are you looking ahead to for this coming week?
Well, let's see. The past week did a lot. I mean, there's so many bills now that are coming through in the legislature. Was able to hit the Athens Diner up in Colchester, which I would highly recommend. Used to be the Blue Line Diner right off of exit 16
Oh, I
by
know
the
the Blue
Costco
Line.
area.
Yeah.
You know the Blue Line? Yeah. Well, it's
New
now
ownership.
the new ownership. It's the Athens Diner. Yep. So they have a Greek twist on all the regular diner fare.
Oh.
So it's really good. So I mean, down in Jersey and other places, it seems like half of the diners are Greek.
Oh, is that right?
Um, yeah,
I
it's
didn't realize that.
amazing. And
So more of a
so this,
Mediterranean sort of menu, or?
yeah, I mean, it's like sauces that get added onto your different things. The breads are different a little
Yeah.
bit, and they have homemade bread there, which is fantastic. So that's great. The Athens Diner. Last week was the St. Albans Maple Festival, the
Oh yeah.
parade, and it's a 3-day festival. Starts Friday through Sunday, and on Sunday they had a parade, and it was easily 10,000 people along the streets in St. Albans. It was a huge turnout, and people are just anxious, I think, to get out and be with one another. So that was big. And went in the parade. That was a lot of fun. And talking to people along the way and what's important to them. It's great to really have one-on-one conversations with people and find out what's on their mind. Sometimes it's not what you want to hear. Sometimes it is. But it's always very informative.
What are the
So that
main
was cool.
themes I know you've been getting out a lot across the state. So what are some of the main themes that are on people's minds right now? I mean, I would assume COVID, but aside from the obvious, what are people mainly concerned with?
It's funny. It's housing. So no matter where I go, I went to a chamber mixer for the Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce, and was talking to the woman who had sold her house. No, had lost her house in a divorce, or they sold it to settle it, whatever. But she ended up, living in a mobile home park, and that's where she's living now because she couldn't find any other suitable housing that she could afford, and she was really frustrated, having come out of a nice house and then not really being able to find anything else. In St. Albans, it was the same thing. I mean, I was talking to this guy who's living in Burlington, and he's looking to he's graduating from UVM. He's looking to stay on for at least 6 months. Can't find a place to live. And so it's just that shortage of housing and the price of housing where people are priced out of the market. So I think that's the biggest thing that I hear from people. And, the real concern now, of course, if you're looking at $6 a gallon for gas, if it's not now, then soon, like that's weighing on people's minds, and that's changing their behavior. And COVID is still it. I mean, one of the big issues, because that affects, can you go back to work? Can you have your kid in childcare? And, how do you feel? So those are some of the big issues, at least domestically. And then you start talking about national issues and people just get angry. And that's really frustrating to try to talk to somebody about what's important to you. And then they suddenly will pull down stuff that they have read or believed about what's going on a national level or international, and they're just angry about it. And you got to get through that. But I see that a lot. But what's different now is that people are they're quick to anger about it. It's like, I've always been able to say, I don't agree with exactly where you're coming from. And then we have a civil discourse about it. Not now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the temperature has risen, and that's not just to do with the climate. It's definitely I think, there's a lot of factors that feed into that. But yeah, definitely you're seeing it play out in some of even the school board meetings and select board meetings that we cover. Where it used to be a lot more civil. We're seeing some issues get pretty contentious, where maybe they don't need to be.
Well, you look at the whole controversy over Peacefield Farm and Woodstock.
I keep reading. I just read about it in the Vermont Standard, which I try to pick up all the local news, outlets, and at least skim them on a weekly basis. So I've been following that story a little bit, and I understand the select board overturned or went against the Planning Commission's recommendations with that. You want to tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
As far as I understand it, and I think there are a lot of casualties in this. So the developer, John Holland, and developing the property for Mangalisa Restaurant, Matt Lombard. And Matt is a very successful restaurateur. He does a great job. He grows a lot of his own, all of his own pigs and chickens, and has a great product, much sought after restaurant. So Matt does a great job. Now, looking to expand into that other space, it just met up with opposition from the neighbors and met up with opposition from other folks that really didn't think that there was a permit or permitting process that was properly followed to establish an 80-seat restaurant in a rural part of town. So then the Act 250 Commission then said, okay, we have to review this. And they said, this doesn't fall within the town plan, because we've read the town plan and it says right here that, this is not a district in which this type of commercial operation is allowed. And somebody else read the same town plan and said, no, the town plan says we're trying to encourage agriculture in these sections. And this is supporting agriculture. So that should be, should be what we're doing. So two totally different views of the town plan. So the Town Development Review Board was a split decision, 3-2, as to whether or not it complied with the town plan. And then there was a petition.
And that was 3-2 against, is that correct?
3-2 in favor of.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So then there was the Town Development Review Board, which is in charge of administering the zoning ordinances, making decisions based on the zoning ordinances and applications. So they're a quasi-judicial body. So then what happened is that the applicant, John Holland, and his development are really trying to get permission for their restaurant to go through, and they've gone to court, to environmental court, to try to get the permission through. In the meantime, somehow, there was then a memorandum of understanding agreed to between the developer, John Holland, and the town. So the select board made an agreement saying, yes, we find it's within the town plan, which really clears the way through Act 250 then to say, it's definitely in the town plan. So we're going to remove that obstacle. Other obstacles to the Act 250 permit to get it through to become a permitted use of the property. And from that doesn't mean they get their permit right now, but it means that they clear that one hurdle. Mm-hmm. So the petition, there was a petition that was circulated that in support of Mangalisa Restaurant to really change how properties or the location of restaurants or agritourism restaurants within the town, saying they could be placed, really in other districts as long as they had 60 seats and other minimum criteria or maximum criteria. So they presented this petition and went to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission said, it's not us to vote on this because it's, 5% of the voters has to go to the select board. But the Planning Commission voted to recommend to the select board that they reject the petition or reject the wording. So the Planning Commission did vote that way. I think it was a vote of 4-1 went to the select board, and the select board then said, okay, we are going to reject this petition, but instead of sending it back to the planning commission to revise the rules, they said, we're going to ask the zoning and planning administrator to write the rules instead of the planning commission. So that's kind of the whole story. That's where we are now. But in the process, we've had the planning and zoning administrator quit, or I'm sorry, take another job somewhere else, and his assistant also leave her job. The head of the planning commission has resigned, and the town manager is now on administrative leave. And it's not all a direct result, but I think it's all because of just the personal attacks and what's going on in town. And we need more of that civility to say, let's have a conversation about this. Let's just not threaten lawsuits and other stuff. So this is a very unfortunate casualty of what has been transpiring over months, over years.
It seems like this one issue has then become the catalyst of something maybe even sort of bigger, like a real division in the community.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, there's a lot of value to a town plan and having people contribute to it. Unfortunately, when the town plan is in the process of being revised, not many people show up to the meetings.
Yeah.
It's like until it affects them. Exactly. And that's when they're saying, okay.
It's very predictable. Very predictable.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just Woodstock, it's pretty much everywhere, yeah. So
yeah.
There aren't enough people involved with the process.
Yeah. I mean, the process is
sometimes
hard.
Sometimes the sausage making is ugly or boring or confusing or laborious, and but you need people to be involved in that process because it is going to become the law of the land.
So that's the thing, is that the town plan has said, where do we want development to occur? Mm-hmm. And basically, the town plan says, yes, we want to encourage agriculture and agricultural entrepreneurs. Absolutely. Does that mean that we want to have a commercial restaurant there? Well, somebody might say yes, somebody might say no. Mm-hmm. But really just trying to come up with a reasonable plan and interpretation. And that's really, that I feel for everybody involved with this process, because the neighbors are like, we didn't buy our property here or didn't move here expecting that to be here. Meanwhile, this restaurateur is really great. It's like, this would be a really great asset, but maybe not there. And the developer, he's committed substantial amounts of money and a lot of himself in trying to make this thing come to pass. Beautiful building, gorgeous. So it's a matter of, I feel sorry for everybody and also the public servants that are involved because it hasn't been easy for any of them.
Yeah, that's tough. So
yeah.
I guess stay tuned if you're interested in.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always thought that we should never go by the loudest person in the room as to how to make decisions. That there's a reason why we have process, and that's to protect the interests and rights of the individuals involved and make good, clear decisions, not just to be bullied. So it's important to follow that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good uplifting note to end on. And
yeah, I'm so sorry. Oh.
I was being somewhat serious there. I mean, that was, I mean, you put a positive note there on, and inspiring people.
My heart sinks for everybody involved, and I know we'll get through this, and we'll be a little scarred and maybe a little more wary about it, but we'll know that there's a reason why we've set these things up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, with that, you got to get on the road. Thank you again for filling us in on another week at the State House. Yeah.
And we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
All right. You bet. Thank you.
All right.